Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about the 2024 Neon, the 2024 Nicolas Cage film, the 2024 horror film, Longlegs. All right, so we're going to squeeze Longlegs and get the Dungeons & Dragons juice out of it. So first of all, let's talk about what Longlegs is. So Longlegs, I want to recommend this movie, but I need to put the asterisk around it for horror, okay? So I actually like horror, but I am extremely, you know how, you hate picky eaters? People are like, oh, well, I'd like a banana sandwich, but cut the crust off, and I don't want, peanut butter with it. It has to be strawberry jelly, and not, just red jelly. It's got to be strawberry jelly, right? And it's got to be a particular brand, I'm that way with horror. I am extremely specific about horror. So I like art house horror. I think that's the right genre, but I would go even further than that. So basically, I think it's easier to say what I don't like. I don't like slasher films. I just don't like slasher films at all. I've never been interested in them. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't really acknowledge them as good horror films, right? Saw. I don't think any of those are good. They're just bog standard slasher films. Actually, those of you might even be the best of the slasher film genre. I think the best of the slasher film genre is still garbage. So I don't like slasher films, right? So, and then I don't like films that are ambiguous, that have an ambiguous ending, right? So that cuts out a lot of horror. And I have a Regal pass, so I can go to the movies as many times as I want. I can see every movie that comes out, right? And actually, the only genre there's one other genre that I'm not going to mention. There's two genres that I actually put an asterisk on, and I'm very, very careful to not go see these movies. And I only want to see the best of the best, right? So Longlegs came around, and people I cared about were doing good reviews on it, and I was like, that looks interesting. I think I saw like half the trailer, and I was like, that's interesting, but I'm just going to skip it from my normal, I'm going to skip most horror rule, right? But a friend of mine reached out, and he said, I've heard really good things about this. Would you like to go? And I was like, bet, I'm in. Let's go, right? And I'm really glad he did, because so here you go. Longlegs is the scariest movie I've ever seen in my entire life, okay? Now, let me explain to you what the measuring stick is. I think that prior to seeing Longlegs, the scariest movie I'd ever seen was A24's Hereditary, then A24's Talk to Me, then A24's Midsummer. So I think, A24 is the pinnacle of horror. I think they're the ones who do it best. But this Neon film was fantastic. I should also say, I really did like the Black film. I thought that was quite good. And you'll find coverage of that right here on this channel, right? All right. So let's talk about Longlegs. So what is Longlegs? So one, Longlegs is everything I like in a film. It is made from the perspective that the supernatural is quite real and quite deadly, right? And so this movie is actually specifically saying, you heard people go, hail, and then the next word, right? I'm not going to say it. So I'll say, hail, and then they say it, right? This movie is about the devil. This movie is about Beelzebub. And I don't even want to say the name, because I feel like it's kind of like Voldemort. You say the name, you draw it to you, right? And it's not even an it. It's a thing. It's not even a thing. Beelzebub is a real dude who really defied God, and God cast him down, and now he's the king of all demons, right? And this movie is 100% Beelzebub is real. The devil is real. He has real power, and there are people on this earth who really worship him and really do his work, right? And so the movie just goes from there, right? And it was really terrifying. All right, so one, let's talk about what are the takeaways for a dungeon master or a dragon master from this film. So one, the takeaway for a dungeon master is that, one, I think we like to say that any story can be told with Dungeons & Dragons. I don't think that's true, especially after seeing Longlegs. You could never tell a story like Longlegs with Dungeons and Dragons. And the reason why is Dungeons and Dragons has a specific history, right, of being connected to the occult, right? And so if anyone was ever able, so like anybody who wanted to tell a story like this, like Longlegs, you'd have to do it on, with Shadow Dark. You'd have to do it with OSE. And the reason why is it would upset a lot of people if you did it with Dungeons and Dragons, and I even think it would upset Hasbro. And the reason why is Dungeons and Dragons had a real reputation of being really connected to the devil, right? And they worked very hard to manage that situation and break it, right? And there are connections in Dungeons and Dragons to this very day that very much connect to the actual real occult, right? But they've been the number of them have been reduced, and the terror of them has been significantly reduced. One thing that shocked me is in this film, this FBI woman is attempting to find this killer named Longlegs, and basically what she's found is that this killer is clearly directing other people to do his or her killing for them, right? And the killer in this film, Longlegs, is played by Nicolas Cage. That I brought, you know what? I'm not even going to touch that in this video. The topic of it is so large, I would have to do an entire video to even discuss Nicolas Cage's role in this film. By the way, 5 out of 5 star film. I highly recommend it. I think this is top tier horror, this is top tier horror. It's just really, really, really good horror. I actually don't think you can get better. This is the best horror film I've ever saw. From the perspective of this, terrified me. It absolutely terrified me. I'm gonna have problems in the dark for about 2 weeks to a month. This is a seriously scary film, right? Because everything that this film said was real and was dangerous and was murderous and was terrifying and was right in our own world, I think are in our own world, right? So, very, very scary film. All right. So, one, I don't think you can tell stories about the devil with Dungeons and Dragons because of Dungeons and Dragons history with the devil, right? And because the owners of Dungeons and Dragons have worked hard, right, to break the connection to devil and Beelzebub, right? But there are still some things in there remaining. So in this film, one thing that really shocked me was the FBI agent was doing some translations, and in order to do translations, she actually got an occult book, which was the Guide to the 9 Circles of Hell. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. I don't remember anywhere in the Bible it ever saying that that hell had 9 circles. But you know what does say? It does say that hell has 9 circles? Dungeons and Dragons, right? And so I was like, oh, that's pretty occulty, and that connects directly to Dungeons and Dragons material that's in the player's handbook, that's in the DMG right now. You're like, oh, that's a little problematic. And I'm curious, is the 9 Circles of Hell gonna make it through to the new Dungeon Master guy? That'll be very interesting to see. I'm very curious, right? So you cannot tell stories with Dungeons about the devil with Dungeons and Dragons anymore. One thing, and next thing, realize that every time a Dragon Master sits at your table, you are giving them a chance to do something incredible. So this film was an incredibly good film that was very well cast in most of its parts, and the male detective that's a great point. So the male detective in this film, he goes by the name, the male FBI detective, this whole movie is set in the 90s, is Blair Underwood, is played by Blair Underwood. Okay, so the main protagonist, male detective, is played by Blair Underwood, and he did a phenomenal job. And what's really special about this is Blair Underwood literally is there's a meme that, Blair Underwood is the most milquetoast, friendly facing, appeasing actor on the planet, right? And actually the meme was so strong that Dave Chappelle was able to counter the meme with one of his best skits ever with Blair Underwood. So I hadn't seen Blair Underwood in easily 10, 15 years in anything good, right? He puts in a phenomenal performance. So just remember, right? There are Dragon Masters in your community. They may have done 15 years of garbage work, but when they show up at your table, right? One, give people a chance, right? Blair Underwood has not done good work in 10 or 15 years, in my humble opinion. But he showed up for work for this, and he was phenomenal, right? And so just remember, you have this opportunity to do something real, right? You have this opportunity to do something real and do something significant when each chair at your table is an opportunity for somebody to leave behind the nonsense goblin shop bad Dungeons and Dragons player nonsense that they've been putting on, and to really tear the roof off of something and really do a phenomenal job with it. Now, the main character, Lee Harker, right? It's another one, and this is a broader discussion, and I have discussed this on this channel, but I'm trying to think of a definitive take on this, right? And here's what I'm trying to say. I think we've reached a point where what I thought was really interesting is, oh yeah, Lee Harker was poorly cast. The woman that played the main female protagonist, she did a adequate performance. The film was fantastic. And she needed to deliver, and she did deliver. But when I walked out of the film, I was like, I can think of 3 women who would have done a better job with that, that I would have much rather have seen in that role, right? The girl who played Veronica on Riverdale, I think would have crushed that role. And a whole bunch of other actresses as well. So that's another one, is I don't think we've really I don't know where I'm landing on this, but it's percolating in my mind. What happens when you realize that the character that has been built is bigger and better than the Dungeons and Dragons player who showed up to play them, right? And that you actually do have a Dungeons and Dragons player at your table rather than a Dragon Master, right? That really the player does not deserve to determine the fate of the player character they created, because the player character they created is better than them as a person. That's a big question, right? But Lee Harker in this film really reminded me of that. I was like, that role could have been done better, right? And I've been thinking about this, what do we do as a table when we realize this player character has come to life in a way that has far surpassed and is now limited by the Dungeons and Dragons player who is playing them, and that really needs to be handed to a new, better, that needs to be simply handed to a Dragon Master, someone who actually knows how to do Dungeons and Dragons, not play Dungeons and Dragons. I am so disgusted by the term Dungeons and Dragons player, and I'm telling you now, every single channel you hear say Dungeons and Dragons player and use that terminology, I don't think anybody who's really seriously thinking about Dungeons and Dragons still is really using the term Dungeons and Dragons player. I really think it's time to switch over to Dungeons and Dragons to Dragon Master, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing. And have a fetch millennium.